Hello there. Welcome to my class. My name is Marcio de Paula, and I will be your instructor for today's lesson. Today we will be talking about QuickBooks Desktop 2020 Chapter 2. Before we jump into working with customers, vendors, and banking tasks, we'll go through the process of creating and setting up a company file. By taking the knowledge you gain from this chapter and coupling it with what you will learn in the rest of the book, you will be ready to create a file for your own company at the end of your QuickBooks studies. In this chapter, you will create a new company file and set up the chart of accounts and new users. By the end of this chapter, you will be able to plan and create a company file, edit your QuickBooks preferences and customize a company file, enter opening balances and historical transactions, run list reports and find help for QuickBooks, set up QuickBooks users, explain the benefits of the QuickBooks ecosystem. Let's get started. You have already had a chance to review the QuickBooks company file for Parrot's Paradise Resort, an ocean resort in Key West, Florida, owned by Jimmy Parrott. Now you will go back in time and create the file. There are many things to take into consideration when creating a new company file in QuickBooks. For instance, you need to know how your business is formed when your fiscal year begins, your federal identification number, and whether you will be operating on a cash or accrual basis. You also need to think about what you want to get out of your QuickBooks file and what type of questions you want to answer with your data. As you work through this chapter, creating and customizing the company file for Jimmy Parrott, you will understand what information you need to gather before ever sitting down in front of a computer. So, here we go. Planning and creating a company file. Before setting up your QuickBooks company, it's essential to do some careful planning. Take the time to think about the information you want to get from QuickBooks. Choosing your start date. Choosing the start date that is right for you is crucial. Very ambitious people may think they want to start their QuickBooks file the day they started their company. This is an excellent idea, but it isn't convenient for a busy or cost-conscious entrepreneur. Keep in mind that you must enter all transactions for your company, such as invoices, checks, and bills paid, from the start date forward. If you choose a date too far in the past, this process will take a long time to complete. Start your QuickBooks company file at the beginning of a month, a quarter, or your fiscal year. You may want to discuss this matter with your accountant to help determine your business's best and most reasonable starting date. The actual start date should be the last day of the prior period rather than the first day of the current period. For example, we will use December 31, 2021 rather than January 1, 2022. This is important because you can run reports showing your opening balances before any new transactions are added. You will then be able to analyze and, if necessary, make changes to opening balances much more quickly. The 5 P's. Sit down and figure out what you want QuickBooks to do for you. It's difficult to go back and add a new field for every customer or change every transaction. But a little planning at the beginning can save you a lot of time in the future. Think about the 5 P's. Prior. Planning. Prevents. Poor. And performance. As you get ready to start your company and consider anything that the stakeholders need. What type of information will each stakeholder need to be able to interact efficiently with your business? For example, potential stakeholders may include your accountant, customers, vendors, employees, stockholders, and partners. How many QuickBooks company files should you create? Generally, the best guideline is to set up a separate QuickBooks company file for each tax return you will file. Remember, the business is separate from the owners and other companies. Therefore, revenues and expenses of the business should be kept separate from the personal expenses of the business owner. Also, revenues and expenses for other companies operated by the same owner must be kept separate from one another. There are several ways to create a new QuickBooks file. Create a company from scratch. Upgrade from a previous version of QuickBooks. Convert from a different QuickBooks edition. Convert a Quicken file. Convert a file from other accounting software. To access connected services in QuickBooks or even use your software, you must log into an Intuit account. QuickBooks will sign into the account for you as part of the setup process, although you will have to enter your Intuit username or email and password. QuickBooks allows you to work with your company file for up to 28 days before requiring the login. When you create a new company, QuickBooks makes it easy to select from various options. The first decision you must make is to who the company is being created for. When working with your own company, or a company you're an administrator, you will choose the first option. However, if you're creating it for someone else, for instance, if you work as a QuickBooks consultant or bookkeeper, and are setting up QuickBooks for a client, you will choose the second option, which allows you to create the file without logging in. The Start Setup option allows you to provide a minimal amount of information and get started with QuickBooks right away. However, once you've entered the Start Setup information and your company file is created, you will need to set up the rest of the information required to run your business. Choosing the Detailed Start option takes you to the Easy Step interview window. Here you provide more information when creating your company file. If you wish to create your new company file based on an older one, QuickBooks will allow you to keep the lists and preferences from the old file while removing the unneeded transactions. For example, some QuickBooks users prefer to keep a separate company file for each business's fiscal year. Thus, you are maintaining preferences and list data while removing transactions makes this easy. To complete this task, you must clean up your company data from the old file using the Cleanup Company wizard. Be sure you have a large window of time available before you start this process, as it can take a while to clean up a large file. QuickBooks will create a backup and archive a copy of your file as a part of this process and verify file integrity. When creating a new company file, an additional option available to you is to convert an existing file from Quicken or other accounting software. At the beginning of the chapter, you can see the list that Jimmy prepared before he set up his new company file. A checklist with this information, and the additional information, is provided for you in your Student Exercise Files folder. The good news is that most of the information can be changed after you set up your company. The one item you can't change later is the industry type, because your entire starter chart of accounts will be based on it, making sure you have it correct for the initial setup. You will work more with the chart of accounts later in this chapter. A quick payroll. Although we don't discuss payroll in this chapter, you need to know a tad about it if you choose to create your new company using the advanced setup method. To include addition or deduction on an employee's paycheck, you must first set it up as a payroll item. During the Easy Step interview, you will have an opportunity to create payroll items. If you will be using QuickBooks for payroll and wish to set it up during the setup process, you will need to have information for each employee, name, address, social security number, and withholding information from the employee's W-4. All additions will be found on a paycheck, such as salaries, hourly wages, and bonuses. All payroll taxes the employees are required to pay. All payroll taxes you, as the employer, are required to pay. Any additional deductions you will be withheld from paychecks, such as investment plan contributions or child support payments. Choosing the correct industry. QuickBooks will ask you to search for the industry that your company most closely resembles during the setup process. Then, QuickBooks will use your choice to create a chart of accounts close to what you need. It will take you less time to edit it to fit your unique business than to start from scratch. QuickBooks will also create profile list entries based on your selection. Choose carefully here, as you cannot go back and change the industry type option. Adding people, items, and bank accounts. As a part of the setup process, you have the option of adding the people with whom you do business, the products and services you sell, and your bank accounts. It's up to you whether you enter the information here or in the individual lists later. The beginning balances of accounts can be entered during this process as well. Double entry accounting and the opening balance equity account. Suppose you have an existing company for which you are setting up QuickBooks. In that case, you should enter the balances of all asset and liability accounts during the setup process, although you can enter them in the registers later. These account beginning balances are named opening balances in QuickBooks. When you add the asset and liability accounts with an opening balance to your company file, the accounting equation will not be in balance unless at least one other account is involved. Therefore, after you create your first balance sheet account, QuickBooks will create an opening balance equity account, in which the account beginning balances you enter will be placed. Asset beginning balances credit the account, while liability beginning balances debit it. This account is created to have an accurate balance sheet from the start, even if you haven't entered all assets and liabilities for your company. To ensure your books are set up correctly from the beginning, ask your accountant to confirm that your chart of accounts is set up correctly. A quick conversation and a small bill now can prevent a large bill in the future. QuickBooks Preferences. You can control many options and features in QuickBooks. For example, when you created the new company in the previous exercises, you set many preferences, such as whether the company has employees or collects sales tax. Those can be changed through the Preferences window as your business changes. So, the way you interact with QuickBooks is controlled by the preferences you select. The Preferences window has 23 categories of choices you can set or modify so QuickBooks can work more efficiently for your company. The Preferences window lets you control how you interact with QuickBooks, and the company administrator can make changes on the Company Preferences tab for how all users interact with it. Each category has two tabs on which preferences can be set: the Company Preferences tab and the My Preferences Personal tab. The administrator controls company preferences. They determine how the entire company interacts with QuickBooks. Each user handles personal preferences. They dictate interactions between QuickBooks and that one user only. Changes made by an administrator affect all users. Here, an administrator turned on the preference to include task icons for statements and statement charges on the home page. Individual users can change general settings on the My Preferences tab that affect only their personal QuickBooks user login, including the program's color scheme. This is a good place for you to look if QuickBooks is not acting normal, as a preference may have been changed. The administrator sets all the company preferences for a QuickBooks file. This person makes decisions such as what is displayed on the home page, the default basis for reports, whether sales tax is assessed, and whether to use account numbers. In the next exercise, you will customize the task icons that appear on the home page and ensure the default report basis is accrual. Since you will likely be working with this book outside of the date range used for the company file, you will also turn off date warnings for the file. Many companies still use account numbers with their chart of accounts, though a current trend shows fewer companies doing so. This preference is found on the Company tab in the Accounting category. In many preferences categories, an individual user can choose from a variety of options. For example, in the next exercise, you will change the color scheme for your QuickBooks file and decide to refresh your reports automatically. Modifying the lists in a new file. During the setup process, you chose the industry type that was the most similar to your own. Now it's up to you to customize the QuickBooks file to fit your company. You will need to look at several lists after setting up your new QuickBooks company to ensure they are correct. If any of these lists is incorrect or incomplete, you will need to edit, delete, or add entries to them. Chart of accounts. Customers and jobs list. Vendor list. Item list. Customer and vendor profile lists. Fixed asset item list. Employees list. Payroll items list. Price level list. Primary entries in these lists are populated during the setup process, and you may have added list entries in the QuickBooks Desktop Setup window during setup. It's up to you to continue adding and modifying entries in this list once the company has been created. You will begin this process by working with the chart of accounts. Customizing the chart of accounts. The chart of accounts is comprised of all the asset, liability, equity, income, and expense accounts your company uses. You use the chart of accounts list window to create new accounts, edit existing accounts, and delete unused accounts. If you're using QuickBooks for an existing business, you'll want to talk to your accountant and get a copy of your current chart of accounts. If you're starting a new business, you may also want to contact your accountant for guidance on how best to set up your chart of accounts for your unique company. In QuickBooks, you will choose from a variety of account types that are all based on accounting's 5 main account types. When you add an account to the chart of accounts, make sure to select the correct account type, as this is one of the most prevalent errors accountants find in their clients' QuickBooks files. Keep in mind that your behind-the-scenes action will be incorrect if the wrong account type is selected. The generic chart of accounts that QuickBooks provides will have some accounts you probably won't need for your unique business. You can choose to rename, edit these accounts, or delete them. Renaming an account is appropriate if you're working with the same account type. Deleting is suitable if you no longer need additional accounts of the same kind. You can change the order in which accounts appear within your chart of accounts. By default, QuickBooks alphabetizes accounts by type. The chart of accounts is structured so assets are listed first, liabilities second, equity accounts third, income accounts fourth, cost of goods sold accounts fifth, and expense accounts last. This structure must remain intact. You can move accounts around only within their type. Moving list items works the same way in the various lists in QuickBooks by clicking and dragging the diamond to the left of the list entry. However, if you move your accounts and later decide you want them alphabetized by type once again, QuickBooks allows you to resort the list. Resorting the list restores the QuickBooks default. Having a correctly set up QuickBooks file will make filing your taxes much more straightforward. To set up your file to track information for taxes, you will need to tie the accounts in your chart of accounts to the correct tax lines. When you create a new account or edit an existing one, you can set the tax line to align. To keep precise records, you may wish to use QuickBooks subaccounts. For instance, to keep the number of expense accounts within reason, you are likely to use only one expense account for all your computer and internet expenses. To track expenses more closely, though, you may want separate accounts for your hardware, software, and internet service. So, again, subaccounts are a great way to track these different expenses while keeping the number of expense accounts down. When you run profit and loss reports and budgets, you have the option to expand the report, display subaccounts, to show details, or collapse the report, display only main accounts for brevity. Customer and vendor profile lists. Now that you've learned how to work a bit more with the chart of accounts, it's time to learn about customer and vendor profile lists. These lists contain data you will use throughout QuickBooks in forms such as invoices and bills, and as fields in other lists such as the vendor list. So, for example, when Jimmy created his new QuickBooks company and chose the company type to base it, QuickBooks created a generic chart of accounts and populated the customer and vendor profile lists with entries relevant to that company type. Look at the profile lists that QuickBooks provides to track customer and vendor information, as well as the examples of forms and lists in which you may find them appearing as fields. Using the customer and vendor profile lists can help you in many ways. You can even use a list for a purpose other than that for which it was intended. For instance, if your company doesn't ship products, you do not need the ship via field, so you can use that field to track a different additional aspect of your company. You can't create new profile lists, so you need to maximize the lists QuickBooks provides by modifying them to track all information required by your company. There are two main benefits of entirely using these lists. They can be included in reports and used to filter the reports. For example, you can use the customer type to display only residential customers on your profit and loss or customer reports to conduct a focused marketing effort. They can be used to customize form templates such as a custom invoice. Opening balances and historical transactions. If you chose a start date for your company that was not the first day you were in business, it's important to enter all the historical transactions and opening balances in your file. You need to make sure you have the correct opening balances in QuickBooks for all your accounts. There are 5 methods by which you can enter opening balances. The type of account you're dealing with determines which way or combination of approaches will work the best. The 5 methods available are: Easy Step Interview for bank accounts only, Journal Entries, Forms for individual transactions, Registers, Lists. Lump sums can be entered when creating entries, Editing a beginning balance. If you need to correct a beginning balance, you have 3 options: via the Edit Account window, which provides a link to the account register, or a journal entry. For example, suppose you incorrectly entered $15,000 as the opening balance for a bank account when you created it. In that case, you could open the account register by double-clicking the account in the chart of accounts and change the amount in that window. Finding help in QuickBooks. When you're starting a new company file, you'll likely have questions. QuickBooks has a built-in help feature as well as a coaching feature that can come to your rescue. Through the Help menu, you can get a new business checklist guide, year-end guides, add services, and other valuable tools. There are two main ways to get help. You can use the search field on the icon bar to search through the company file, or use the Help menu. The Have a Question window is a separate window you can launch to search for help. This window is contextual, which means its contents change depending on the active window. For instance, if you choose to tackle it while the chart of accounts window is open, the results will relate to that window. When you decide to get help from QuickBooks, a separate Help article window will also launch and appear to the right of the Have a Question window. You click a result in the Have a Question window to launch the Help article window, which displays the information. And remember, this window launches with the Have a Question window automatically if you issue the Help command. Setting up users. As your company grows and you hire additional employees, you may decide to allow certain employees access to your QuickBooks file. You can define different roles by creating users and granting them access to specific areas or functions. The use of passwords is required to ensure the protection of your company data. The administrator can allow users to stay logged in for up to 90 days. There are things to consider when enabling the option to keep users logged in, though. For instance, this feature is not available in a hosted environment that uses roaming profiles. In addition, if multiple users are accessing the same company file on the same computer, you still must log off. Talk to your IT professional. During the setup process, the administrator account is created. The administrator, admin user, controls access for all users and determines the company's preferences. If you're the sole user of the company file, you can continue to use that account. Limiting access is sometimes done according to a role the employee plays. For example, you can hire an employee to do accounts payable and receivable, giving users access only to those areas. You can further restrict access to not allow the printing of checks. It's a good idea to have a plan for which users or roles have access to which areas of QuickBooks. A written guide in a table format might be a good approach. Keep in mind that the administrator controls all company preferences in the Preferences window. Users can change only their personal preferences. QuickBooks allows you to set up unlimited users for your company file, although the number that can access the file at any one time depends on your QuickBooks license agreement. Note: a user set up as an external accountant has access to all areas of QuickBooks except those that contain confidential customer information. An external accountant can review your file and make changes separate from those of other users. Only an administrator can create an external accountant user. The number of areas for which you can give access rights to a user depends on the preferences turned on for the company. For example, Jimmy has a bookkeeper for the resort, Marlene, who needs access to all areas of sales and accounts receivable and purchases and accounts payable, creating new transactions, printing forms, and running reports, as well as the ability to create new checking and credit card transactions. Passwords. It's essential to make sure you have a password that is not easy for others to guess and is easy for you to remember. Once you set your username and password, the Change QuickBooks Password window allows you to change your password whenever you wish and to set or change your secret challenge question that will enable you to retrieve a forgotten password. This challenge question should not have an answer with which others are familiar. Attention! Minimum password requirements are 7 characters with 1 uppercase letter and 1 numeral. Include a symbol such as $ or % for more security. Usernames are not case sensitive, but passwords are. When you set up new users, you should set them up with a generic password, such as 123ABC, as it's temporary, and QuickBooks will force them to change it when they first log in. QuickBooks provides a way for more than one user to access a company file at the same time. In QuickBooks Pro and Premier, up to 5 users can have simultaneous access to the file. Most tasks that you usually do can be completed in multi-user mode, but some must be performed in a single-user manner. These tasks cannot be completed while in multi-user mode. Create a new company file. Set or edit a closing date. Rebuild, clean up, or verify the file. Create or work with accountants' copies. Merge, delete, and sort list information. Change company preferences. Export and import data. The QuickBooks Ecosystem. In the olden days of QuickBooks, it was pretty much a standalone product that didn't have to play nicely in the sandbox with any other programs, other than integrating with Microsoft Office applications. This has changed though, and the apps available to you are a key aspect of QuickBooks functionality. For instance, you may choose to use Method CRM to manage relationships with your customers, SmartVault to manage your documents online securely, or Quincy for actionable financial reporting. QuickBooks and all the apps that work with it to help users increase productivity are termed the QuickBooks ecosystem. QuickBooks is a fantastic program, but it can't be everything to everybody, and that's where the apps come in. Intuit has embraced this ecosystem and supports independent, third-party developers, including having a contest each year called the Apps Showdown with a $100,000 prize. In fact, at the time of this writing, on the QuickBooks Desktop Apps website, desktop.apps.com/home, there are 3 apps developed by Intuit and 215 by third-party developers. The ones you use will be determined by how you use QuickBooks for your company. Some apps are helpful for companies from various industries, while others are created for a specific sector. On the QuickBooks Desktop Apps website, you can search by industry, business function, QuickBooks version, or a combination of these. You can then expand or narrow your search, compare the apps, and research them by exploring customer reviews, case studies, demos, tours, and more. The developer's cost is determined by the developer and may be free, a one-time fee, or a monthly subscription. Many of the apps also provide a trial or demo copy, so you can try it before you buy. Once you've chosen an app, follow the instructions on the developer's website to purchase and download it. The Report Center and Running List Reports. To view the information in your QuickBooks file in a meaningful way, you need to become skilled at producing reports. You'll need to make list reports early on in your QuickBooks experience. For instance, your accountant may wish to see a list of the accounts you've set up for your business to ensure all is well before you get too far down the road. The Report Center allows you to learn about different types of reports without creating them by trial and error. It includes sample reports and descriptions of the kind of information each report provides. It also provides a search feature to aid you in finding the correct report. Once you're familiar with the reports in QuickBooks, you might find using the Reports menu a quicker way to access them. The menu is divided into the same categories as the Report Center and provides additional options, such as scheduled reports, commented reports, and process multiple reports. One category of reports you can access contains list reports. They simply display the information found in your various QuickBooks lists in an easy-to-read format. That's all for today. Your next step is to review this chapter and get the exercises started. Thank you for participating in today's lesson. I will see you in our next session. And remember, if you don't know, askmarcio.com.